Hello, everybody. My name is Graham Elwood, and you are watching BAM, the Political Vigilante. This is the People's Channel, folks. You make this happen, right? You're the best and smartest fans in the whole interweb because you come here because you know two things. I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what I believe. No one is paying me to say this. I don't have a billionaire giving me money. I'm not trying to say things to get certain clicks or whatever. And if I get it wrong, I'll own it. And if I say something you don't agree with, just know that it's my opinion. It's not, there's no one in my ear telling you. This literally is just in my ear so I can hear everything when I play videos and interview people. That's all it's for. There's no producer going, oh, Graham, you can't say that. Or, oh, don't forget to plug the sponsor. Like the ads that play in my YouTube videos, I don't get paid for those. I've been demonetized for over 2 years. I literally only make my money from you guys donating to this show on rockfin.com/Graham Elwood and patreon.com/Graham Elwood. One of the reasons I started doing this show was I lost my home as part of the 2008 crash and I had a 16-month battle with the banks to try to save my home. And I ended up losing my home to foreclosure in March of 2010. And it was heartbreaking. It was really crushed me emotionally. And I felt like a failure. I felt like a loser. That home was supposed to be my retirement. I hosted a bunch of game shows 20 years ago, and I bought a little house in the San Fernando Valley. It's like the suburbs of Los Angeles for $200,000 in the year 2000. By the year 2003, the housing market was going up, and it nearly doubled in value. I sold it for about $380,000, and then I sold that home and bought a condo near the beach in Santa Monica for about $550,000. That home today would be worth probably $1.5 million, right? And if you read Dave Dane's book, Chain of Title, you see how they scammed me out of it. So I don't have, and you know, Bush put about $700 billion in the stimulus right when the banking collapse happened in September of 2008. He lost the election November of 2008. Obama got sworn in January of 2009. And Obama put another 7, 8, almost $1 trillion in. So it was over $1.5 trillion between Bush and Obama was given to help the banking crisis. And yet still 6 million foreclosures happened. And I was one of them. And so, and that's 6 million families. That's not 6 million individuals. That's 6 million families. So that's probably 12 to, anywhere from 10 to 20 million or 30 million people were directly affected at this. I was married, so there was 2 of us that were affected, directly affected. And so, and the banks, nobody got put in jail. And people say, oh, they shouldn't have. Well, no, a precedent was set. Iceland, where they had a huge corruption problem with their banks and in the banking problem in Iceland, their bankers got put in prison. CEOs got put in prison. Some of them are still in jail today, I believe. We didn't do that. We gave them slaps on the wrist and gave them bailout money. We took our tax dollars and whatever the Federal Reserve just printed up that day and gave it to the banks. We can't seem to afford Medicare for all. We can't do student debt forgiveness. We don't have money for infrastructure. We're 13th in the world in infrastructure, but we have trillions of dollars to give to the banks. That was in 08, 09, 2010. And we've given, I think, another 7, 8 trillion or more during the pandemic from both Trump and Biden to show you both parties are utterly corrupt. So the banks don't care about the people. And it's not just in America. So England is having serious economic problems. They have a national healthcare system, the NHS, but they're trying to gut it. And the neoliberal policies, the wealthy elites are ruining England. I was there in October. I was at a Julian Assange protest, and everyone there is like, oh, England is just on the verge of being as awful as America. And so this is what's happened recently. This is in BBC, Bank of England, except you are poor, remark sparks backlash. You think that's going to spark backlash? So this is in the BBC online, right? So this happens. Small business and unions have hit back with the Bank of England chief economist saying people need to accept that they are poor, otherwise prices will keep soaring. So they have awful inflation like we have here. We all have seen the prices go up in the last 2 years. Gas has come down a little, but like, come on, gas is $4.50, $5 in California. Oh, wow, it was up to $6. But you go to the grocery store, you've seen your grocery bill in the last year. You know how bad it is. And it's the same in the UK. And I know we have fans who watch the show in the UK. So I want to say this, for just the fans in the UK, but also fans in America. I just want to show you these big banks don't care about you. The Bank of England just made the mistake of saying it out loud. That's what they just said. We don't care. Just accept that you're poor. Hugh Pill said, a game of pass the parcel of workers asking for wages. So there's interest, is inflation has gone up. So workers we need higher wages. We've seen currently the WGA, the Writers Guild of America. I'm not a member of the WGA. I'm a member of SAG-AFTRA, which is the actors union. The WGA is currently on strike right now because they're not getting good wages. And some people say, oh, the WGA, a bunch of high overpaid writers. Only like 1% of union writers are getting big 6 and 7 figure salaries. A lot of writers make $30,000, $40,000 a year because you work on a show for whatever, 8, 10 weeks. And then if you might not work again for a year. So, and again, the streaming services, Hulu, Netflix, they're making billions of dollars and they're not paying their writers. So that's the other thing. It's the percentage. So we also have the Amazon, Christian Smalls. We had him on the show 2 years ago to talk about the Amazon. A lot of people Starbucks workers we formed something close to 300 Starbucks have been unionized in America in the last 2 years. But this is a global issue because these companies, they have their own leg to stand on. They're showing record profits and then inflation goes up. The Federal Reserve in America just raised the Fed another quarter point. So we're now at 5.25%. And England is very similar. So listen to this. There was reluctance to accept households were worse off. The Federation of Small Businesses said his comments were out of touch. Tina McKenzie, policy chair of the trade body, said small firms had been left with no choice to pass on the huge increases they have seen for energy and input costs to customers. That's the other thing too. I know a lot of small businesses. I mean, here in Santa Monica on Main Street, there's this little Mexican restaurant that's been there for years. It's now over $11 to get a vegetarian burrito. And I'm not mad at that store. They're just barely staying alive. Their rent keeps going up. The cost of the food and everything keeps going up. So how are you supposed to, if the minimum wage in California is $11 an hour, you have to work a full hour to buy a burrito? It's in the UK. This is what's happening in the UK. And I was there in October and I saw the prices of and everything are going up. And if the cost of everything, gas, food, electricity, taking the train, people take a lot of public transportation in the UK. If that cost is going up, then they need to make more money in wages. And she said, in many cases, even that is not enough to fill the gap. Many firms who are only just hanging on day by day were not able to invest and were cutting costs, which, the small companies are barely getting by. The big companies that say, oh, we can't afford these wages, they always have big CEOs and executives making big fat paychecks. And those guys never cut their paychecks. They never take a pay cut. Because come on, polo horses got to feed, aren't going to feed themselves. I mean, how are you going to ride around in a yacht if you don't have a big salary? So totally get that. Amanda Gearing, a senior organizer for the GMB union, said it was absolutely outrageous, to be honest, asking some of our lowest paid workers in the country not to take a pay increase when inflation is so high. That's what this guy was asking. Just admit you're poor. He said, just admit you're poor. You're not going to get any more money. Oh, a rich guy told you to just suck it up? Bootstraps? People can't afford to live. They're not able to pay their rent or food or put food on the table. Paul Toak, the Tuck general secretary added people didn't need lectures over pay and called for a plan to make sure workers get their fair share. UK inflation. And again, this bank boss not only said people need to accept their poor, but he said, don't ask for a big pay raise. The big bank guy making probably a 7 or 8 figure income said, don't ask for a raise. Oh, okay. As long as he's got money to drive his, one of his Rolls Royce or his Bentley to his private club, as long as that's taken care of, then the rest of us can just, pick food out of a garbage can. UK inflation, which is a measure of the increase of price of something over time, hit 10.1% in the year to March. For example, if a pint of milk cost £1, but went up to £1 10 cents a year later, then the annual milk inflation is 10%. Okay. March inflation figure was slightly lower than February, but the fall does not mean prices are coming down. It means they are rising at a slightly slower pace. So they're not coming down. They're just not going up as fast. Oh, gee, what a relief. Part of the Bank of England's role is to try to keep inflation at its target rate of 2%. The bank, which is the UK's central bank, so this is sort of like their Federal Reserve, is charged with setting interest rates, and in response to the inflation rate going up in recent times, its officials have increased interest rates, which make the cost of borrowing money more expensive for people and businesses, which is what they're doing in this dumb country. This strategy, in theory, is meant to make people spend less so that demand for goods reduces and prices slow down or even fall. God, none of these morons read a history book. But with the strain of rising prices being felt by households trying to pay higher energy bills and food costs, like I mentioned earlier, many people have asked for pay raises to help ease the cost of living. Yeah, the prices aren't coming down. You're raising interest rates isn't bringing the prices of anything down. Oh, people will just buy less food. Huh? You're forcing this never works. It forces everybody to raise prices, which means then people will spend less money. God. But the strain, people working across several industries such as rail, the NHS, which is their national health service, and the civil service have gone on strike in recent months over various reasons, including pay. You saw we've been covering what's happening in France, right? The whole country just shut down. That's what the UK should do. That's what America should do, but I don't know that America will ever wake up to do that. America's too busy fighting with itself over, pronouns and celebrity, whatever. Job vacancies still being higher than they've been in previous years. Workers have had a stronger hand in asking their employers for more money. So Mr. Pill, who made £95,000 last year, including benefits in his first 6 months at the bank, is paid more than $190,000 a year. This is the guy that told everybody, just stop asking for more money and accept that you're poor. Thanks, Pill. He told Beyond Unprecedented podcast from Columbia Law School that people demanding higher pay and businesses passing on increased costs by putting prices up added to inflation and caused prices rise even further across the economy. He said what the UK imports from other countries, such as natural gas, was costing a lot more than what it exports. Gee, maybe you guys go to wind energy. I don't know. Just a thought. Maybe there's green energy, so you don't have to export natural gas. Oh, but if you don't expect natural gas, then you don't have to be a part of NATO, which creates a proxy war in the Ukraine, so America can sell more natural gas to Western Europe rather than get it from Russia. Anyway, sorry, I digress. Somehow in the UK, someone needs to accept that they're worse off and stop trying to maintain their real spending power by bidding up prices, whether through higher wages or passing energy costs down to customers. He added, look at this jackass. Look at him. Little candy ass, never worked a day in his life with his little soft skin. He added, what we're facing now is that reluctance to accept that. The pass the parcel game that's going on here, that game is one that's generating inflation, and that part can persist. Unreal. You can see that underlying all of this, he's got a point, which as long as inflation stayed high, we're going to demand higher wages. And as long as we demand higher wages, inflation is going to stay high. God, capitalism is a broken system. But I don't know. Things are doing really good in America, I think. Oh, is there a banking crisis? What troubles at Pacific Western Silicon Valley banks mean? Now, we talked about this last week. Pacific Westerns had like stock lost 50% of its value. But we've already had a bunch of banks have collapsed in the last 2 months, right? When First Republic Bank collapsed earlier this week, right? JP Morgan Chase bought it out. So we had Silicon Valley Bank in March. We've had First Republic Bank went under, and then it got bought out by JP Morgan's Chase using federal money, but there wasn't a bailout. The head of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, who has ties to Epstein, thought the banking crisis was coming to a close. No. There's a bunch of commercial real estate bubble that's going to pop. Because commercial mortgages are usually only for 2 or 3 years, maybe 5 at the most. Unlike a housing, a home mortgage is anywhere from 15 to 30 years typically, right? So all those mortgages are coming up. And a lot of companies after COVID shutdown have stayed mostly remote working, or they've even gone to hybrid where some people come in the office, but they're realizing we don't need these big office spaces. And if people aren't even willing to come in, they'd rather work at home now, and they're working remotely. People have moved out of big cities and they can work remotely from wherever. Why would they need to come into an office? So there's going to be a commercial real estate bubble is going to break. No one's talking about that, but I am. You're hearing it here. Yeah, I didn't know that either, but that's coming. And there's a car loan bubble. A bunch of people are not going to be able to afford. They're behind. There's like a large percentage of Americans that are behind on their car loans. So in England, just accept that you're poor. In America, listen to the bankers. Your money's safe. When they say your money's safe, I've been telling you, whenever you hear that, it's not safe. Get your money out of the big banks. Put it into a credit union. And this is not financial advice, but I've got it in Bitcoin. Shares of San Francisco-based PacWest Bancorp plunged this week after investors learned the regional bank was considering a sale. And now, thanks to the speed of the internet and everyone's got a smartphone, that's what happened at Silicon Valley Bank. Everybody all these rich people in Silicon Valley were like texting each other going, uh-oh, it's going under. We got to do something. So the bank has said it's not experienced high number of customer withdrawals, but the news still stoked fears of a potential surge in withdrawals among regional banks. While the company's stock price soared 85.2% Friday, its shares were still down 42% for the week. Another regional bank, Western Alliance Bancorp, gained 44.8 Friday, but its loss for the week was 29. Meanwhile, TD Bank Group and First Horizon called off their planned merger on Thursday. That's not a good sign. Banks call off mergers when it doesn't look good, when the books don't add up to merge. Citing uncertainties around regulatory approvals. Oh, that's corporate speak for we think one of those banks thinks the other one's going under. So what's next for the banking industry and how does it affect others? Again, this is in USA Today, all right? Not a very subversive newspaper. What are the 3 reasons big banks failed and why is PacWest looking shaky? As the Federal Reserve tightened monetary policy and raised interest rates again to fight inflation, the value of long-term assets such as mortgage-backed securities and U.S. Treasury bonds held by banks plummeted. If another bank goes under and another bank goes under, and there's going to be, mark my words, guys, I hope I'm wrong, but I mark my words, there's going to be a run on the banks. And you're going to see big lines of people outside of Wells Fargo and Bank of America and Citibank. Because they're like, I want to pull my $5,000, $10,000 out of there. And they're going to say, we don't have the cash. And the federal government's going to have to come and bail them out. Most bonds pay a fixed interest rate that becomes attractive when interest rates fall, driving up demand and the price for the bond. On the other hand, if interest rates rise, investors will no longer prefer the lower fixed interest rate paid by the bond, thus driving down its price. Many banks increased their holdings of bonds during the pandemic when deposits were plentiful, but loan demand and yields were weak. For some banks, the unrealized losses brought on by the Fed's sudden interest rate hikes will stay on paper. Unrealized losses stay. Got to read through the lines here. This is USA Today. So they're not going to come out and say it. Unrealized losses will stay on paper. That means they don't have the money to pay for it. But others may face actual losses if they have to sell securities or liquidity for other reasons. Meaning if the markets start crashing and they need to pay, or people like want their money, they want their physical cash out of the bank, and they don't have the physical cash to pay you, the customer that has your money in savings, they're going to have to sell their bonds to liquidate these assets to pay off the cash. And then the bond market's going to crash. Do you follow? That's because those older bonds with low interest rates could be sold only at a much lower prices than new bonds that carry higher rates, according to the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. That, in a nutshell, is what happened to Silicon Valley Bank. When turmoil in the tech world forced many of the bank's customers, largely tech startups, to withdraw their deposits. And then they were like, get your money out, get your money out. And people, these tech startups, let's say they raised $2 million in funding for their tech startup, and they had that $2 million in that bank, but it's only guaranteed, the FDIC only guarantees $250,000. So they had all this other money that wasn't protected that they needed to pull out there, because if they didn't get it out, they wouldn't be able to run the daily operation of their business to pay their employees. So then fear hit, and that's when a run of the bank happens, is when everybody is afraid, and they go to the bank. In addition, Silicon Valley Bank, we've covered this before, had a disproportionate share of uninsured deposits, any amounts over $250 that are considered uninsured deposits by the federal deposit by the FDIC, with only 1% of banks having higher uninsured leverage, according to a study. Like First Republic Bank, Pacific Western Bank lost 20% of customer deposits compared to the end of last year as customers moved their deposits to the perceived safety of larger banks. Silicon Valley Bank failed because of a textbook case of mismanagement by the bank. Oh, that's shocking. That won't happen again, though. That's a once in a banks don't mismanage your money. They're fine. Your money's safe. If you have Bitcoin and you have it on a cold wallet in a safe or something like that, then you have control of your assets. Its senior leadership failed to manage basic interest rate and liquidity risk. Oh, weird. Bankers mismanage something? That's never happened. Its board of directors failed to oversee senior leadership and hold them accountable. And Federal Reserve supervisors failed to take force. The whole system is corrupt. What's being done to try to fix this? I'll tell you what's being done. Nothing. Nothing is being done. And not Joe Biden or the Democrats or Trump or DeSantis or the Republicans are going to fix it, because they're in on it. They're paid by the banks to keep the system corrupt. Did we learn nothing from 2008? I learned a lot, and I learned the hard way, which is why I talk so much about financial news and responsibility on this show. And when I started learning about Bitcoin, I wanted you guys to get empowered so that you could stay ahead of something like this. So you can't trust these banks at all. So protect yourself the best way you can. Protect yourself the best way you can. Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. That's why you are making Gotham great again, because you're the best audience out there. This is the People's Channel. Shave your knuckles for justice. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. We are still in our 9th month of demonetization from YouTube. So support what we're doing at patreon.com/Graham Elwood or rockfin.com/Graham Elwood, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency platform. It's free to sign up, and there's a premium level at $10 a month. And for that, you get everybody on the platform's premium content. Myself, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Jimmy Dore, Whitney Webb, Kim Iverson, Abby Martin, and many, many others. You can also support what we're doing at Venmo at Graham-Elwood, and go to GrahamElwood.com. We have a PayPal button and a PO box. I also have crypto wallets, which are all in the show notes. Thanks for supporting what we do.